Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Slasher Scotty. I am your host, Scotty McCoy, and boy, do I have a surprise for all of you. I have on Zoom with me right now Jim Krut, and he played the helicopter zombie in George Romero's Dawn of the Dead. Hey, Jim, how you doing today?
Who, me?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you.
okay. I guess I'm okay. Yeah.
That's good. I'm glad you're doing good. I'm so glad I could finally meet you. So excited to make this interview happen.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Scotty. I'm looking forward to having a chat with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I guess to get started, let everyone know how'd you get your start into acting.
You want to go back to elementary school when I was in like the
Sure.
fourth or fifth grade and they did a play about Abraham Lincoln and I was the tallest kid in the class? Hey, and I could remember, or at least mostly remember, the Gettysburg Address. So I got the role. Hey, it was a heck of an audition. Who's tall? Can you remember four score and something? Yeah, yeah. So anyway, from there I progressed to high school and wrote a play in high school, and then did the lead in the senior class play or junior class play. So I was always interested in theater. I did some community theater in central Pennsylvania,
Mhm.
and when I got to college in Pittsburgh, that was at Point Park. Uh, that's where I'd say things really unfolded or unfurled because at that point I ran into Tom Savini, who was also a student there as in journalism, and a group of us, Tom and me and a few other folks, decided we also wanted to get involved in theater. Although the school had a theater program, we weren't enrolled in that track. So we did some theater there, and after that, came back from the army after a few years, and Tom came back after a couple years, and we connected in Pittsburgh. And he said, "I've got this great role for you in this George Romero film that's coming up, the image of which is behind me here now." And I had no idea what I was stepping into or onto, but I had worked with Tom, I trusted Tom, and I thought of him as a pretty creative guy, very passionate, and I thought it'd be fun to work with Tom.
Nice, nice. So, did you have to audition at all, or it was just knowing Tom?
Yeah, Tom said, "I've got
Nice,
this great role for you," and that was it.
awesome, awesome. So, what was the makeup process like to be transformed into the helicopter zombie?
Well, they turned me upside down and dipped me in chocolate. No, they I had to go over to Tom's workshop a couple weeks before the
Mhm.
shoot, and if you're familiar with the material alginate, it's like
Mhm.
a kind of a rubbery, plasticky, flexible
Mhm.
material, and when it goes on, it's sort of slathered on. It picks up all the details in your face from which they can make either like a mask or,
Okay.
in my case, a head bust. So in that point, Tom said, "Well, you're going to have to breathe through a straw while we put this
Mhm.
on you, on your face." And after several minutes of, then Tom said, "Okay, well, I think that's firm enough now." And I'm like, "Oh, good." He said, "Well, now we put the plaster on top of that." And then, of course, the plaster is poured on top of that, and all that has to harden. Because with the alginate, it picks up the detail, but it doesn't hold its shape. If you were to take it, lay it down on a table, it would just kind of
Mhm.
lay down. But so Tom called me a couple of days later after that um, experience and said, "Jim, we've got to do it again. The plaster cracked."
Right.
I jumped up and down. I was just so happy. No, I was not jumping up and down for happy. But anyway, it was an interesting experience, and I thought, well, at least I never have to do that again.
Yeah, I heard a lot of trauma stories from guests about the whole breathing through a straw, claustrophobia thing. No,
Yeah.
Anne Ryerson from Friday Part Six was one of them that told me that she absolutely hated it.
Yeah, a lot of people say, "Hey, do you want to get into makeup?" No, no, no,
No.
thank you. No, thank you. I think I'm busy that day. I'm not a real big fan of makeup. But on the other hand, I have to say, back when we were in college, for example, you had to use the available materials. we did this play called by Eugene Ionesco called Rhinoceros. And in the
Mm-hmm.
course of that, there's this little cafe town setting, and the people start gradually turning into rhinoceroses,
Mm-hmm.
if that's the proper plural of rhinoceros.
Right.
And to do that, I'd step off stage, and Tom would be there with spirit gum, attaching these larger ears,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'd go back on, and then a few minutes later, go back out, and the ears would need to be keep to grow, continue to
Mm-hmm.
grow. So that meant that got ripped off, and then new stuff got attached. By the end of the show, I was pretty raw. This is not fun anymore. This hurts. So anyway, that was a number of years ago, and in the meantime, of course, Tom not only worked with the materials available, he developed a lot of his own types of materials for makeup
Mm-hmm.
and effects work. And I think in the course of experimentation and actual implementation of what he was doing in the shoots, he came to know and use and appreciate a wide variety of materials that might not have been considered before, but
Mm-hmm.
also I think he was instrumental in crafting things that were easier on actors' skin, that
Mm-hmm.
could dry more quickly, so you don't have to have somebody in the chair forever and ever and ever.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously, if the cameras are rolling and you're sitting in the chair waiting for something to dry, it's like the dollars are ticking along, and no director, no producer wants that. They need to
Mm-hmm.
have things continue to move.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was Dawn of the Dead. It was probably 20 years later. Then I did audition for another film, and the Guatemalan Handshake, and that was being filmed in the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania area.
Nice.
And I think I left from work, and I thought I'm just going to give this a shot. I went over to where the auditions were. It was toward the end of the process. I was the
Mm-hmm.
last one getting in, and I was just filling out my paperwork. And they said, "Well, come on in. We're going to be wrapping up." And I went in, and we just started talking.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, "Oh, we've got this great role for you as Kenneth, the technician, the power plant operator." And I said,
Nice.
"Hey, I was working with an electric cooperative, so I figured, hey, a power plant operator might be like a promotion."
Nice.
And that night I got a call from the director, and he said, "Why didn't you tell me you were the helicopter zombie from Dawn of the Dead?" And I said, "Didn't think it was relevant, and it was on the paper." "Well, we didn't read the paper, we just talked." So anyway, that's when I first got into the next film after Dawn of the Dead,
Nice. Nice.
and about maybe 25 or so films since then.
Nice. So how long were you in makeup for the for helicopter zombie?
Well, once we got through the process at Tom's, he was able to cast a bust of my
Mm-hmm.
head. And from that, he could take whatever time he needed for materials, the prosthetics and so forth to be applied, to
Mm-hmm.
experiment with, to dry, and finally get the final pieces together. So when we got to the airport, we had to do the beard, mustache,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the the hair parts, and the tubes and such leading into the, I was going to say the brain pan, but I don't know if zombies really have brains. That's why they want them all the time. Who knows? It's I'd say maybe you know getting into it might have been an hour or less at that point,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't do any shooting with me on the first day. The second day is when the helicopter came in, and we did the shoot, and
Nice.
bam, everything was done in one take. And
Nice.
George seemed to be very happy with the results. So he's, oh, that's
Mm-hmm.
wonderful, wonderful. Next, you know, you got to keep moving on when you're in film. You make the
Yeah, absolutely. So what was like the helicopter? I guess that wasn't really you that did the special effects with the helicopter, like, killing you, right?
yes. I think the engine on the helicopter might have been running.
Mm-hmm.
That's in my mind as a memory. But the blades, I knew that they could be canted, like done at something of an angle. But you have to trust the people you're working with.
Yeah.
And yes,
A
So
lot of trust, but you gotta.
yeah, sure, last famous words. But yes, I believe those blades were animated in afterward, according to
Okay.
Tom, because he would have been involved with the the post production parts of it.
Right.
But it looked pretty doggone good.
It did. It really did. So what was it like working with George Romero?
My experience working with George was less than it was working with Tom,
Mm-hmm.
simply because George brought in good people who knew what they were doing, and Tom was doing the makeup and effects and knew how things were supposed to go, the timing, uh, the angles, what was going to look good, and so forth. So for this scene, Tom did most of the direction. The first part of it, the earlier part of it, as Tom was getting things set up, George directed like from across the field. There was an airplane. He said, "Let's have you, come out from under that." Okay. And so he, did those parts, and up to the point where we got onto the boxes, and then George was behind the camera, and Tom was kind of calling out directions. I know Tom and I had talked about the makeup, but we hadn't really talked about the character, what's
Mm-hmm.
my motivation and so forth. And so I said, Tom, what did he, did these zombies talk or anything? Because I hadn't seen any of the other scenes that
Mm-hmm.
had been shot at the mall or any of the other
Mm-hmm.
locations. I had no idea. He said, not really, but you just do what you want to do. And okay. So I said, well, can I, yell or moan or anything like that? He said, well, yeah, you can do whatever you want to do. Okay.
Right.
Okay, that's good. So I don't think they necessarily used anything like that, but if they did, then I didn't get credit for it.
So I don't know if you've ever been asked this question before, but I'm gonna ask it anyways. So if you could give your character, the helicopter zombie, a backstory before he became a zombie, what would you choose his backstory to be?
That's a very difficult question, Scotty, and I'll tell you why.
All right.
Um, Several years ago, I was approached by someone who said, I've got this film idea. We've got most of the script together,
Mm-hmm.
and it has to do with your character as the helicopter zombie, and that he didn't really die.
Oh.
And so it gets into more of that detail and so what has happened in those ensuing days and months, but it hasn't really happened.
Mm.
So I don't know whether I'm at liberty to even discuss that. A lot
Oh.
of people have proposed things. Well, he was an airport mechanic. He was
Mm-hmm.
somebody getting onto a plane. He was waiting for a flight.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard a number of things proposed. I guess if I had to choose one, I wouldn't,
Okay.
because I like the idea that the character is neutral enough. He
Yeah.
could be just about anybody.
Yeah.
A lot of the characters were very specific. If somebody's wearing a baseball shirt or a gas station
Mm-hmm.
shirt or dressed as a nurse, and you can say, that's who that is. And to me, and then there's this mix of other people, and you think, oh, they look kind of familiar.
Mm-hmm.
I know George Romero was asked at an interview, well, what makes the zombies so scary? And he said, because they're your neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it, all of those characters, all of those neutral characters, and all those
Mm-hmm.
very kinds of specific characters are identifiable. They could be your neighbors,
Yeah.
certainly.
Yeah.
And I think that, in a sense, is the terror of it. In
Yeah.
that if you had a problem, you might say, well, I'm going to go get my neighbors to help me. Well, maybe those neighbors are the problem in this situation.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, look at The Walking Dead. Like, the very, I think it was like the first episode, when you first meet, Lenny. I think his name was, the actor's name is Lenny. His kid, his wife, I mean, was the zombie.
yes,
And that's what makes it scary because now, your wife is this monster.
yes, yes.
So that does make it scary because it's like, okay, do I let them live and roam around mindless, or do I put an official end to them? It's a
And I think
terrifying
it's
situation.
that kind of contradiction or complexity of thought that keeps
Hmm.
people from actually doing anything.
Yeah.
They're sort of like frozen. Do I do this or do I do that?
Right.
And it's not like if you think about going to see a movie, you don't know what to expect. unless
Mm-hmm.
you really gotten all the spoilers and read reviews and all that stuff.
Right.
You go and you want to see it unfold before you.
Yeah.
And life is like that. That it
Mhm.
unfolds before you. You're never quite sure what to expect.
Yeah.
You walk into a mall, you walk into a gas station, you walk into someplace else.
Yep.
You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But not only that, you don't quite know how you're going to react to whatever is happening.
Right.
Flight or fight. Those are usually the two
Yeah.
basic human emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And so, does he go after his wife and try to eliminate her as a problem, or does he just run away because
Right.
he still has all of these emotional ties and love still is there?
Yeah.
At that point, it might be a little misplaced, but because the situation has changed so drastically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like you mentioned about even spoilers, seeing all the spoilers, like the Halloween Ends trailer hits tomorrow and all the leaks are coming out now. But with Dawn of the Dead, there was no things that really as the spoilers because there wasn't, social media. There wasn't internet like that back then.
That's true. That's
You didn't
true.
have all that stuff. So you can go to a movie theater and enjoy going in fresh and you can go not opening night and not be afraid of getting all the details of what happened.
Well, that and it was released unrated.
Yeah,
So you didn't even have a guideline. Well, should I bring my kids to this?
right. Yeah.
Maybe not right away.
Right.
Better check it out, preview it. I didn't let my daughter watch it till she was 16,
Yeah.
and that was kind of a fun experience too.
Nice. Yeah.
I said, "Well, what do we want to do with your 16th birthday?" She said, "Dad, can we watch your film?" And I said, "Okay." So we put it on the machine and got a big pizza, and we sat down and ate
Nice.
the pizza. And at the beginning of Dawn of the Dead, there's a lot of gunfire. A lot of people are getting
Yeah.
shot and blown up.
Yeah.
And each one, she's a little sensitive, so she's wincing. And after a few minutes, she turns to me and she says, "Well, Dad, you you don't get shot in this, do you?" And I said, "No, honey, I don't get shot. It's okay.
Well, you didn't lie.
Bye. No spoilers."
That's hilarious. So, what was the best part about filming Dawn of the Dead, and what was the worst?
The best part was, of course, well, I've done a lot of theater. In
Hmm.
Pittsburgh, I worked in theater for about 7 years.
Hmm.
Um, I did a, I did. We started a theater company in Gettysburg. We had one in Huntington, Pennsylvania. And so I'm used to, bringing whatever you have every moment that you're on stage.
Hmm.
You put your ultimate into the character. Sometimes that ultimate doesn't mean just going over the top. It means being very subtle,
Right.
whatever it is you do. And the other thing about working on stage is that you know the script from the beginning to the end.
Hmm.
You know who the characters are, and you probably know their lines as well as you know your own.
Hmm.
In film, you might say, okay, this is your segment. You may not know what the rest of the movie is about. You just have to trust that. There's a lot of element of trust in all this.
Yeah.
You have to trust that it's going to be in keeping with who you are as a person, perhaps,
Hmm.
and it's going to be an interesting thing to do.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, and I mean, to make a movie, there's a lot of elements. There's a lot of people. There's the special effects, the hair and makeup, the gaffer, lighting techs, camera operators, boom mic operators, of course, director, producers of all levels. And each one of them have their own talents, their own skill sets, and they end up, having to do what they do best. And, the director might want to make sure everything goes right, but you kind of got to trust that the producer knows what they're doing, or the gaffer knows what they're doing, or the camera people know what they're doing, the actors know what they're doing, you got to
yes,
trust all that. Like you can supervise, but you have to let them do the skills that they're good at doing.
you're exactly right, Scotty. There's no
Yeah.
question about that.
Yeah.
Walking onto the set, I was a stranger. The only person I knew
Hmm.
was Tom, who was going to be
Hmm.
there. I mean, I'd worked in theater in Pittsburgh, and there were a number of people that I'd worked with who were
Hmm.
also in Dawn of the Dead, but they were not necessarily at the airport.
Hmm.
Most of them were at the mall or at the TV studio beforehand, like David Early and David Crawford and Nick Tallow. Uh, so I didn't know quite what to expect. I was like a visitor.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Hollywood and you say you're going to go to see this sound studio, but don't talk and don't make any noise and all this. Oh, okay, you know what I'm supposed to do here. But getting into it, and when you're on camera, you realize it all comes down to that.
Mm-hmm.
There's no more BS. It's you. It's you and that lens.
Yep.
And you got to do what you're trained to do and what the director
Mm-hmm.
has expected of you, and try to bring out your best.
Yeah.
Of course, the individual thing with Dawn of the Dead is that there are a lot of characters,
Mm-hmm.
and there was no particular school as such in terms of you have to walk this way and move this way.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody limp and bend your right arm. There wasn't all that, but they wanted everybody to try to bring out their own kind of characters, whoever you
Mm-hmm.
are, whatever your interpretation is. And I think that kind of comes back to that's your neighbor. They're all moving a little differently. And it's
Mm-hmm.
more interesting that way too. It's not
Yeah.
like a lockstep army marching toward you or
Yeah,
something.
like kind of like the even going back to The Walking Dead, it's not like, they're all like a horde just doing the same exact things in a group. Like, that just shows choreography. Like it is makes it even more realistic that, oh, it's not a horde coming at you in one fell swoops in sync with the growling or moaning or whatever and the limping and all that. Like they're doing their own thing because that's what that person did maybe when they were alive and now they're the undead.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, even though with The Walking Dead, they do have a bit of a school
Mm-hmm.
to teach the zombies, in a sense, what not to do.
Yeah.
Don't everybody start limping with your left leg and bending
Right.
your right arm. Don't everybody be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do some natural sorts of things, and then
Yeah.
figure out in there too if you've got a character, if they've got a response. In a lot of The Walking Dead, of course, there's a lot of heavier makeup than there
Mm-hmm.
was in Dawn of the Dead, because in a sense, those zombies were more deteriorated in The Walking
Mm-hmm.
Dead over time. You're seeing
Mm-hmm.
this deterioration going on, and so they're less recognizable as your neighbors, but just as
Mm.
kind of darklings going through the woods
Yeah.
and coming after you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the last question I do got for you is all about you. Do you have anything else that you would like to promote? Projects, social media, websites, anything at all, appearances?
Well, I just finished a couple great appearances, and we were just at Hershey, Pennsylvania this past weekend. We did
Okay.
Living Dead weekend at the Monroeville Mall, where most of Dawn of the Dead was filmed in
Nice.
June. And there are like 6 stores full of guests from Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead,
Mhm. Nice.
Land of the Dead, so forth. Anybody who's interested in a Romero film should go to Living Dead weekend. And that, in a sense, is part of the family. Uh, um, I don't know how else to put it, but it's like a family sensation of being around both your friends and people you've met through the various films.
Mm-hmm.
And they're they may be scary as heck on screen.
Mm-hmm.
It could be some of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet when
Yeah.
you're just sitting down having a sandwich with them or something.
Yeah.
But as far as projects, I've got a couple film projects coming up. Some of them are smaller roles and discussions about a couple other things.
Yeah.
Uh, Still looking at a couple more appearances this year.
Okay.
Normally, I'd just put those up on my website, which is helizombie,
Yeah.
HELIZOMBIE.com. So helizombie.com, and folks can find me on Facebook under Jim Krut, Krut.
Okay.
And normally, if there's something coming up, I'll put it on there.
Nice.
As far as some of the films, I can't do promotion on until they're released.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they dribble out actors who are going to be in a particular film in advance to build up interest and help secure funding and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the conventions, oftentimes you can't really say, "Hey, by the way, I'm going to be in San Francisco or Atlantic City or something," until the promoter or the organization releases that information,
Mm-hmm.
because they have their own timetable for doing that. So there are some
Yeah.
things in the works I really can't talk to you about at this
No
point.
problem. Yeah, well, as then anybody that's watching this, go to the website, go to hellazombie.com
Hmm.
and check that out. And anytime you have a film project or a convention appearance, anything at all, it'll be up there. And I'm sure it'll also be on your IMDb for any film projects as well.
Yes, yes.
Awesome.
IMDb is kind of fun because, as you may know, there are some films that get started and don't quite get all the way made,
Yeah.
and uh, so I'm waiting on some that need to be kind of wrapped up,
Yeah.
but there are others that are waiting for particular release times. So they may be in pre-production or whatever
Mhm.
because they're waiting for a particular release time.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Scotty, let me ask you a question. How
Sure.
did you get involved in all of this stuff about movies and films and monsters?
So I have a friend named Greg Gilbert. He's the host of Python's Paradise podcast, and he interviewed me back when I wasn't really well known. I just wrote a book on Friday the 13th trivia in February of 2016. I got that published,
Hmm.
and like months later, like that fall, he reached out to me to interview me, and I'm like, sure, why not? Free promotion, whatever. So I did it, and we started talking after the interview and we became friends, and we're friends to this day, really good friends, and we talk almost daily. And but at the time I'm like, who did you all interview? And he told me some of the names he interviewed. I'm like, that's pretty cool, I really like that. I think I would like to do something like that. And how do you get into that? He's like, just just get an audio, like audio or whatever. And I used to do it over the phone, and I would hold the phone up to my really shitty microphone at the time, my built-in computer microphone at the time. And
Sure, sure.
yeah, and I don't even know if Zoom was around at the time, and if it was, it wasn't big. I did them all over the phone. Maybe I did a few Skype ones here and there, but Greg's like, "I'll get you started." So he got me the information for Victor Miller, the screenwriter of the first Friday the 13th, and that was my first interview, and it was over Skype, and I didn't record it. I just end up recording on. I use Audacity for my to extract my audio from the video interviews, and I used Audacity, got them on my, recorded it that way over Skype. I don't even remember how I did it over Skype, to be honest with you. It's been a while, and it was like one of my only Skype interview I've ever done. My first interview. But after that, I did a bunch of interviews. I had Adam Marcus on, and he was like I think he was my third or fourth interview, and he was over the phone, and I was on with him for like an hour and a half. And it was, my hand was like so tired, I had holding it up to the computer to get the audio. And eventually I'm like, and then I just broke you're my 301st interview I've ever done. And you think,
Wow.
what you're thinking, like, oh, it's a lot, but shouldn't it be more in 2016? Well, what happened there? Give me one sec. I have 10 minutes left of the meeting. I don't know why it's timing me, because there's only two people in the room. But anyways, yeah. So I had yeah, I was holding it up. My hands really tired and everything like that because of that length. And I took a break between then and I think like after a couple of interviews, like between I think 2017, 2018, I took a break because my dad was battling brain cancer. So I was more focusing with him, and he passed away last August. But when COVID started up, I started doing my interviews again, like 2019, 2020. Then I started doing my interviews again. I started doing them, consistently every month. And now you're my 301st interview. I had my 300th interview yesterday, and that's pretty decent. And I mean, my YouTube is fairly new, but my audio, my Spotify and Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts, like my audio viewership is roughly between like 15 to 25,000 a day daily views.
That's
Like I get really decent audio views, because I mean, what do you do when you're at work? You put in your earbuds and you listen to podcasts all day. So people listen
is
to my
that what you
interviews, I
should be
guess.
doing at work?
Huh?
Is that what you should be doing at work?
You should be working. I know. I now I work from home, so I usually I have more freedom with with what I can do now. But when I was at the office, like if I was looking for a podcast when that episode is over and they catch me, it's like perception is the reality. So it's like, are you doing your job or are you on your phone? Even though I'm looking for a podcast to watch, and I'm
Hmm.
like I'm just looking for a podcast. Like, okay, just make sure you're not on your phone too much, or we don't want to see you on your phone too much. I'm like, yeah, I get it. But now it's more leniency with working from home all the time. But I mean, I have seniority. I mean, I've only been there for 3.5 years or so, but I mean, I've never had a late time with my job or anything like that. I've never had an assignment late due in or whatever. So I mean, they're more lenient with me and with what I do. But yeah, I mean, as they said, perception is reality, and you,
Well, the
yeah,
workplace has changed considerably,
yeah, it did.
and the thing about filmmaking too, as a part of that, is that you still have to go with the seasons,
Mm-hmm.
or daylight, or
Yep.
other people's schedules and all this other good stuff.
Yep.
But so anybody putting a film together, I tremendously admire that they've got the
Yeah.
initiative and the passion to do it and see it all the
Yep.
way through. And so try to support them. And a lot of
Yeah.
people, as you would mention, how do you get involved with this stuff? People say, I want to be a zombie in a movie. I said, well,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you can be. Really, how? And I said, start somewhere. Don't just
Yeah.
sit at home. Start.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily, gee, there's a zombie movie playing right next door and they're casting. No,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to happen. You're going to have to reach out a little bit, and it
Yeah.
might not be necessarily the movie. Because normally they're going to say, well, what experience can you bring? Or
Yep.
do you know how to talk? Can you do accents? Or can you
Mm-hmm.
walk a particular way? Or are you, an acrobat? Or can you do stunts? Do you know anything about lighting? Do you know anything about sound?
Right.
Do you know anything about feeding people? Because
Right.
people have to eat on set.
Yeah.
You think, oh man, it's all about, walking in front of a camera. No.
Nope.
Like for every person on camera, there's a lot of people behind the cameras.
There is. There
And
is. And if people want to get started, I mean, if you don't know where to start, Indiegogo is a good place to go for if to start building up your resume if you wanted to purchase a pay for a role type of thing. Like I mean, I guess I wouldn't suggest that obviously for seasoned actors, because those actors do it for a living. But for people that want to be in a movie and want to get their start and don't know where to start, then maybe Indiegogo is a good place to start to build up a resume. Then you can gain the experience you need and then be able to start auditioning and after you have the experience.
that's true. And also, there are other local things that you might be able to become
Yeah.
involved in your
Yep.
community.
Local theater,
Because
community theater.
theater has so many things to
Yeah.
offer. Whether you're collecting tickets, even if you're collecting tickets,
Mm-hmm.
you're seeing what all the other people are doing. And maybe one of those roles becomes, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like that
Yeah.
audio guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's got some really cool toys.
Yeah.
And or gee, how'd that camera work? How did they make that green screen effect? How did
Yeah.
they do this chroma key thing so well?
Yeah.
So you go from there, and then suddenly it's less of a jump, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to an audition and somebody says, "Well, what can you do?" Well, I can jump rope. I'm a bricklayer. I can cut wood with an axe. And you think, what's that got to do with anything? Well, the thing is, on a lot of productions, there are a lot of people in the background who are doing
Mm-hmm.
things. If you're, let's say, cast as a police officer or security, something like that, do you know how to dress? How to carry a firearm? Do you know how to, let's say, talk the lingo if you need
Right.
to? It may or may not be in the script as such, but rather than try to train people to do that, it's easier to bring people who have that experience.
Yeah.
You need a construction crew, find somebody who's in construction, or if you're in
Yeah.
construction, say, well, I can do construction, I can cut down trees.
Mm-hmm.
We have a scene where we have to have this tree cut down, and then this other guy's building a wall. You never know.
All right.
So if you go and put yourself forward, list all of your skills.
Yeah.
You may not think that they're a particular skill that's going to make you a good looking zombie going across the road or something, but it might get you a role. And all you have to do really is kind of get started and then stay persistent.
Exactly. Exactly. Couldn't say it better myself. And we have about 3.5 minutes left. So I'm gonna stop it there. I don't know why the 10-minute mark came on. There's only two people in the room. That kind of annoyed me. I don't know why it did that. That's
Time is
kind of
not always
weird.
our friend.
I know, right? Well, I thank you so much, Jim, for joining me today.
Well, it's been very enjoyable, Scotty. Thanks very
Yep,
much for having me, and
absolutely. We'll have to do it
continued good
again.
luck with the rest of your interviews and the great
Thank
folks
you.
you're helping to tell their story.
Absolutely. I thank you so much. You have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thanks so
All right.
much.
Yep. Bye.